she's an academic, she's this wonderful woman, she's a mother. What is it that you want people to be able to describe you as, professionally, personally, or even just about your aura? And so that's where this conversation started. And obviously, sometimes these conversations can be very whimsical. I'm not an expert, so please don't, I know we call it a masterclass. It's a masterclass based on our experience, on what we have learned as two women navigating life in the professional world and navigating business, family, and all the different things that get thrown to us as human beings. And we put together what we believed was going to be what you can call your takeaways, the pillars of this talk. You can record it on your phones or you can record it on a piece of paper, but whatever you take away, even if you take away 3 gems, that's something you had. Or maybe you'll say, oh, I knew that. Or maybe when we go into Q&A, you'll even have something to lend into the conversation. Whilst I was getting ready for today, I did read about, it was an amazing book. I go on to Kindle a lot. It's easier to be on Kindle because even when you're traveling, you can read and you can be on a plane and you can read a book. So I've got about 70 books that I follow or read on Kindle. I buy them. And the one that I've recently bought is by Kubi Springer. And she's written a book, I Am My Brand, Kubi Springer. You must get it. How to Build Your Brand Without Apology. And it's just beautiful. And she opens with such an amazing, powerful poem, which I'm going to stand to give. Sorry, I'm going to be complicated for you, Sia.
No worries.
She says in this poem, it's not her poem, it's written by Walter D. Wintle. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. If you think high to rise, you've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster woman or man. But sooner or later, the woman or man who wins is the woman or man who thinks she or he can. I'm not going to do it. This is Dianne, this is what she did. I'll be stealing your thunder. Tell us a little bit about your background and you know, where you grew up. I always love how you always say, when I was a little girl, a little black girl growing up in Kimberley. And then I just like picture you.
So this little girl from Kimberley, Dianne Philander, born to Charles and Sandra. My parents were teachers. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. So I grew up with, you don't believe it, oh, I like it. So I'm a child of the 80s. We grew up with, the normal sort of, not normal, but, the times where rallies was the norm and being a marshal, and there were Caspers in the streets, and there was toying and singing, but it was also very multicultural neighborhoods. I grew up on the buffer zone of what was called Halashue, Barclay Road, so cut up the township where people were forcibly removed from. That's where we grew up. Grew up in a time where, yes, there was all the security aspect, but we also felt very free and safe for some reason. We were able to walk around. I remember being able to walk to school, going on a bicycle, that safety aspect was there, despite sort of the terrible time that we grew up in. But there was also a lot of fun. Also very, like I said, grew up as a daughter of parents with teachers. So academically, there was always a push. So that was me, sort of a girl from the dusty streets of the mine dumps that came up to Johannesburg at the age of 16, 17, I always say, to be beneficiated and to become something, or I am still becoming. Yeah.
I was really curious about your choice of topic, geography, economic geography. You started explaining it to me the other day.
I also reflected on that, my economic geography, because that's not what I set out to do. wanted to become a doctor, but I didn't write June exams. I think my parents were relieved that I got into university. So I started off with a BSc, and just the exposure at university to other things, that is sort of where the choices changed. And then I sort of realized as a child, I loved atlases and I loved maps and books and stuff, and so it was probably there, latent. So it's been more my experiences and exposure to different processes that has led to this journey around economic geography, which is really, I think a lot of my family still don't know what I do. They go, what do you do actually? Because I mean, you can't put it in a box nicely to say you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So I had a little bit of that. I think they're understanding it a little bit better. I don't know, maybe because there's now a prof title, I'm not sure. Not sure, but it's been a journey of learning. Being exposed to different things. Economic geography really around places and people, and that's what I'm really about, if you, in a nutshell.
And I'm really curious about your journey into UJ and what that's been like, and also the fact that everything you do is about academic excellence. UJ is known for its academic excellence. We've got a few graduates in this room who've come through the School of Tourism and Hospitality, including Tobile Dlamini.
So obviously, as economic geography, you involve with city planning and urban development and rural development, and tourism is one of those sectors. So my time in Mangaung, in Bloemfontein, I was responsible for setting up the economic development unit, and at that time we were also bidding for the FIFA World Cup. So that truly sort of gave me an impetus into the whole world of tourism and hospitality. One of the great hospitality schools is in Bloemfontein. I wouldn't say that much, we're number one at the moment, and we'll be there for a while, but that's where it came. So just, you know, hospitality and tourism, that's true from an economic perspective. So involved with FIFA World Cup. I was involved with government for a while in terms of the economic as a national government, and, you know, I just needed to add value and, you know, finding purpose, which is part of our becoming. And I thought, you know, I've got a background in academia, why not go back to school and see what it is? And again, the power of network. Someone I knew from Bloemfontein said, they're looking for the director of the School of Tourism and Hospitality, UJ. And I thought, UJ? I'm from Wits. What's this UJ thing? I mean, what's yeah, and anyway, I met the then dean, sort of sold this to me and sort of what they were trying to do in terms of future leaders for the sector. And I thought, I bought into that. Went for this interview, courage, tourism, hospitality. I was like, okay, academia, teaching. And yeah, it was a tough interview. I think half the university was sitting in the interview. And I left and I thought, but I was just myself. And I spoke about the changes I needed to see in the sector. I spoke about the challenges I saw that emerged through the World Cup, how teaching would be a great platform for that, and, you know, providing excellent and better skilled people in the sector. But I left there thinking, didn't know enough about what they wanted, but that's what I gave. And the very next day, they came back, said, you've got the job. And yeah, 10 years later, really took the school from on a different journey of change, where it was very vocational to sort of what Lindy's called excellence, just driving the change with young people, that we can be something very different, we can put our minds to it, you can be an outsider coming in and you can learn new things, which is what I was, you know, literally coming from outside of the sector, because the hotel school was a bit of a network, right? I love what Lindy calls them, the Silver Fox boys. They run the industry. So I was really stepping into that space where it was about that. But I was going there to say, if we don't try and move a change, and it was tough days. Early days were very tough, but you keep at it. And that sort of, not for the accolades and the affirmations which came. The ranking as being a #1 school and 18th in the world, it's just because we empowered people, we gave people that sort of opportunity. That was my journey at the estate, it still is. That people feel empowered. And the more empowered you feel, the better you want to do. And that's what drives, that's been my journey so far.
We've spoken about education. One of my favorite books, Becoming, by Michelle Obama. She talks about how in her book, and the reason she called it Becoming, she says, adults would ask her when she was growing up, when you grow up, what will you become? And she writes in her book, now when I think about it, it's one of the most useless questions to ask a child. Because what do you mean by that? At some point you become something and it's not the end. Why do you make it a finite, what are you going to become? And case in point in Michelle Obama, who grew up, in Chicago, in a very impoverished part of the city, parents who put her through university on credit cards. She was amidst students who were movie stars and, brought up with money, and her parents just did the best they could to get her through to where she went. She became a crack-ass lawyer, and that's where she met Barack Obama. She headed hospitals in, directing an NGO in terms of work for the community, and so on and so on. Next thing, she was running her husband's campaign together with her husband alongside Barack Obama. And before she knew it, she was the first lady and the first black first lady and the first black first family in the US. So her point really is even beyond the first house. She's still becoming. You never become. And she's really stressing the point that we must always reach for the stars and reach for more. And I just thought that was really something that when I listened to Dianne talking about economic geography and where she came from and how she started, and evolving herself into the world of academia. There's something else that you talk about, which I picked up from you, and you call it soft power, and I just love it. She says, oh, you've got soft power, Sis Lynn, and I'm like, soft power? What's soft power?
So soft power as opposed to hard power. So we use influence rather than control. And I recently came across, and I'd like to sort of share the different kinds of soft power that we all have. You have the power of position, which comes later in your life, but I think at any level, to use the power of your position. And then the power of personality, and I sort of drawn to that, where the strength of your character, the energy that you generate around you because of who you are as a person. So you can see what resonates with you. When I think of power of personality, I think of the fragrance that you set off in the room. Without saying anything, each of you have that. The power of ideas, the quality of your ideas and your creativity. The power of intellect. This is your brain power. Your analytical ability, your capability to grasp facts and to order them. The power to communicate. Sis Lindy is so good at this. The ability to get an idea or message across in a way that resonates, what lands with different people, individuals, and groups. And the power to connect. I think that's why we're here this afternoon, so that we sort of strengthen this power that we have to connect. It's the power you gain when you are able to see connections. I think this is something I've really developed over years, is where I can see the connections, the overlaps, and really setting up networks and bringing pieces together. The power to invest, and this is what all of us strive for. Money talks. This is the power if you can invest resources or cash. And then the power to reward. And this is where sort of this networking forum where you're able to, it comes from the ability to reward people financially or through recognition. And I think each of us have that power to be able to take someone else along in some way. Where you're able to move someone from situations where they're not succeeding. And those of us that find ourselves in academia or in teaching, just that ability to be able to move someone. So, yeah, that's sort of for me, and it's to try. Sorry, it's really disturbing. It's really trying to work on all those aspects of your soft power. I think that's more powerful than controlling and telling people, and for us to practice and to sort of lean into those different soft powers and to develop them as we evolve. So I've sort of been conscious around evolving all these aspects of my soft power.
I just want to make note that there might only be 3 or 4 men in this audience, and maybe it was by design, because the men who are here were handpicked. We've got Bra Sam, who's sitting, Sam Zima. I call him my official executive coach, because we've been together for, 30 since 2013. And then there's Hope Mabaso, who is a general manager at Santon Garden Court. We met at Birchwood and we connected, and he knows Sam. And then I have my young protege, my Mshana, who is Tembele Hlagwani, a young man who I'm watching very closely because he just graduated from UKZN and is now doing his honors in industrial psychology. So, I don't know if I missed any other men. It's not that is there another man there in the back? Stand up and be recognized. Thank you. It's not by design that we should not have men in the room. Because if as women we want to be able to use all those wonderful sort of soft power techniques that we were listening to you talk about, it's important that we bring men into the conversation. And the reason that I have these specific gentlemen in the room is because they've also, over the years, demonstrated soft power. And it's not a sissy thing that I'm talking about. It's all the elements that you described, your self-awareness, your ability to connect with people, your ability to take others with you, your ability to feel that if someone might be a little less privileged than yourself, or a little less in a situation than yourself, that you have the ability, without making them feel demeaned, to take them forward, to take them ahead. And I hope that even in this room today, a lot of you are feeling the soft power that we will continue to enjoy, but that is being exuded just by your aura. You know, you talked about the fragrance in the room. I know we've got a lot of perfume around, but I think she was talking more about, the sensual fragrance that you bring with your aura as a human being. A lot of it is also about authenticity. And that's one of also the important pillars of your personal brand. That when you show up as who you are. Don't be uncomfortable in being what it is you want to present. In the world today of diversity and inclusivity, I've spoken about the men, we also have a world where the LGBT plus conversation is a very important one. And that this inclusivity means that even in our workspace, in our personal lives, in our families, we need to allow people to be themselves, to be their authentic selves. When women are around the table, or when human beings are around the table, or when the males who understand the women in the room are around the table, everyone gets a chance to be themselves and to, in their self-awareness, have the ability to share what it is that they want to share. Are there situations in the boardroom that sometimes you feel that authenticity is squashed? And have you felt that, Dianne? And if not, have you overcome it?
That's been a journey in itself. That's growth. It doesn't come overnight. And interesting, in my working life, I've always found myself in very male-dominated arenas, whether it's been when I was working with consulting engineers, my time in government, time in the industry. I always realized in the beginning as I started working that I was sort of the quiet voice. So what people would do is sort of say, sorry, speak up. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. And that's a way to disarm you, I think, initially. But then you realize, but I'm not a loud voice. So I'm not going to be, but you need to sort of, you grow your confidence over time. I'm going to make my point, but I'll speak up a little louder, but I'm not a loud voice. And I often found that was a way to disarm you. And I've sort of grown to sort of, I've got a voice, I'm going to use my agency. I can only be Dianne. I'm going to make the point I'm going to make, and this is my point. And it's taken some time to do. I can always say, if you show up as yourself, people can relate to you. I've had experiences with the military. So I'm a pacifist. I'm not in the military. And I recall my research was also with the military, so sitting opposite a brigadier general. So remember, I'm a child from the 80s. These were often seen as the enemy. And I now needed to engage this brigadier general around information that I needed. So it takes a lot of confidence. It's about just gathering yourself together. And even if your voice quivers in the beginning, it's okay. It's yours, and you'll own it. But I think it's a journey. What I'm sharing, Lindy. It takes time, but being yourself and not sort of doubting yourself, and not, I like the poem in the beginning, not making that apology. And the voice gets better, and the voice gets louder, in a sense, as in you feel more confident to speak up. And that's because, you know, I'm just being myself. I'm not being anybody else. I'm not trying to please them and say the things that they want to hear. And that's how the voice gets louder.
You know, in all my 55 years, you might think, what scares Sis Lindy or Mum Lindy or Lindiwe? A lot scares me. But when we allow our authentic selves to come to the table, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and when we call on those people who are there to support us and show those vulnerabilities, it's so much more empowering, because you walk out with their endorsement. They remind you who you are. They give you the reason why you're there, and they fill up the gaps. They find the spots, the weak spots. It's okay to say, I'm weak at this. And so that point of authenticity, I think, it runs very deep for me in your response, Dianne. In the same manner, exposure. You know, when we talk about exposure, again, the younger group of, you know, the younger generations talk about gap years. There were no gap years in our life. You didn't roll around and say, you've got a gap year. But when I was able to defy my father and say I was not going to do medicine, it left me with a year of waiting for my hotel school to, you know, take me on. And so he said, so what are you going to do? And my mother didn't even let me finish answering. She said, you're going to go to my secretarial college where I'm a teacher, and you're going to learn how to do secretarial typing. Well, I thank my mother every day. I can type, I can do my own formatting, I can do my own documents. I actually prefer to write my sort of speeches, and only Susan Reynard can also write for me. But beyond that, I was also able to go and spend 6 months with my then aunt, late aunt, Lindiwe Sangweni-Siddo. She was the chief representative of the ANC at the time in Sweden. This is 1986. And the other half of the year was spent in her office, being a gopher, running around, posting mail, typing, filing, washing dishes, serving tea, answering the phone. But boy, did that year always remain with me, even now. The things you learn, you know, the humility. You feel very important, of course, because you earn a little salary at the end, you know, and it makes you feel very important. What are your most memorable moments in terms of exposure and things that just molded you and kept you, you know, grounded and gave you that opportunity to see the world differently?
It reminds me of gap year. Now, there was no gap year for me when I was there. My baby sister, she came like, you know, she's number 3 in line, so my parents were then okay with gap years. I think there was no gap years, like you go and study, you get a job, and you go and be what you need to be. So for me, I've always been, and I've heard this now when I was sort of trying to suss out from people about what they sense, what is my fragrance. I've always been apparently a very diligent child. So, so that word in the report. So that diligence is that whatever job I took on, I was always giving it my best. So whether it was the cashier at OK Bazaars when I was at school, I thought that was great. I was sort of tilling. Then I was a cashier at the bank, but always doing the best. And then my first sort of formal job, besides being with the consulting engineers, as a young project administrator, sort of in the minute taking and organizing. And sort of those sort of skills you take with you right throughout. It's not about the title, it's about what you are learning in the job. And a lot of people, when you say, can you take minutes? They go, and it's such a skill. I mean, when I think about that, so because of that sort of skill and honing in those very simple things, I had the opportunity of working with some really well-known academic and activists. I went to Ghana when NEPAD was the thing. And something that's very memorable, I took minutes at these NEPAD sessions, you know, for the secretariat. Great stuff, and being able to do that taught me a writing skill. But as I'm in the company of great people at the time, because I was young, and one of my, I remember specifically was memorable, being in the car with Wiseman Nkulu, and him finding an interest as we're driving back in this young girl around what is her interest. And yeah, I was more interested in, oh, look at this man. But he was, you know, and that reminded me that young people, that's where the energy and the answers lie. And that conversation I'll never forget, with him inquiring about me and my studies and what I was doing. Another memorable experience was, I told you I worked with the military, and the military took me to the Seychelles, so it was great working with the military. But I also learned, we took Martin Dolitschek, who was the leader of the attempted coup in the Seychelles in 1981. And I was working on a project, African Civil Military Relations, and we took him back to the Seychelles as part of a reconciliation process. But just again, the experience and working in these conversations and what it meant, those are sort of things that you take and how people engage, and that is sort of stuff that I've taken with me. Yeah, those are things. I mean, I was also, again, like I said, from simple minute taking, the work I did with NEPAD, in the OAU became the AU. I took minutes with all these AU ambassadors at Fancourt. So being at Fancourt, one was great, never been there. Being in Addis was great. Again, sitting with these big decision makers. But again, not being, as you get older, you realize the experience and being in awe, but then also the lessons around what is it that you take from these people and how they've engaged, what can you do? And I think that sort of inspires you to go on and do other things.
Minute taking is really an amazing skill, and I really want to underscore that for many of you who maybe have been asked to take minutes but sometimes don't really understand what is meant when minutes are to be taken. But also the exposure that you get to individuals. You're talking about the AU and the exposure that you got when I was in Sweden with my aunt for those 6 months. It was just normal to bump into Caiphus Semenya or Miriam Makeba because that was her circle of friends. And only later, like you say, it dawned on me, wow, I was in the midst of greatness. These were just in our space at that time, Uncle Caiphus, Mum Miriam. And, they were mobilizing funds for sanctions against apartheid. And so she had musicians that she had mobilized and brought to Sweden, to do her work in the anti-apartheid era. So yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah. We were invited, myself and head of school, to go to the memorial with the family at his home in Cape Town. And I thought, I don't want to go alone. My husband said, I can't do this now, I can't come. And I took my sister along with me. And we got there, and obviously it's a family event. It's a lot of family, and she was like, oh, goodness, it's the who's who. The real Dr. D was there. And I remember asking me afterwards, Di, would you have done this on your own without me? Or would you have just come and started talking to these people that you don't know, and they're the hoi polloi of society, whatever? And I'm like, they are just people. And that has always worked for me. When you take away the title and just the humanness, they're family, they're just people. And I've always used that as a way to sort of build that confidence when you say, when I have to engage somebody, I'm not going to say, oh, it's this Lindy, I'm going to do, oh, it's Solkers. No, they're people. And I'm also a person. And that's how I sort of always engage with people, sort of the humanity, the humanness, and taking away all those things that we do. And I think in South Africa in particular, we have a problem because we've put some of our politicians on those pedestals. We put people on pedestals, and when they disappoint us, so when you rather sort of just engage, it comes back to the authenticity. Yes. Right? People relate to you if you're just that humanness, that person.
I've always valued reading. I had parents who wanted us to be reading all the time. We had to go to the library. You always had to have a book. I've mentioned that I always have a book on Kindle, and I have a number of books that I'm, currently reading. And, as we get into the topic of reading and why we read and what it does and the expansion of the mind and the exposure that it gives you, I want to talk about the book I'm reading currently on Kindle. It's called Life Lessons of a Cattle Herder, Reflections from the Boardroom. It's written by a woman whom I go walking with. We have a walking group, 3 of us. Zuki, who is our sales and marketing divisional head at City Lodge Hotel Group, and Dr. Nomvuselelo Songelo, we just call her Umvusi. And the 3 of us go walking after work, or we used to, before COVID. And we would walk, and we would come, with heavy things on our shoulders. What are we going to, and we just start talking. And this one is telling this one about what meeting they had and how irritated this person made them. And then one of us comes out with a, no, Chobi, you must deal with it like this. And then we start sharing, and by the time we are on the way back from our 5-kilometer walk, we are laughing like little girls. We're just ourselves. We've left our COO title, we've left our Dr. Mvuisi, title, we've left, I'm the divisional head of sales and marketing. We're just 3 girls laughing about all sorts of silly things that I can't repeat in front of all of you. What happens on our walks stays on our walks. She's written this book, my friend, with Dr. Mvuisi. And the beauty of this book is she's talking about something that many people would relate to. If you grew up the way she did, growing up in the Eastern Cape, growing up in, with parents who were not always able to be there because they were working, being brought up by aunts and uncles because, at one point, a person who was very close to her, her grandmother, passed away, her makulu passed away, and she had to be passed from family to family. What was interesting was all along in this journey, I haven't finished the book, looking and striving for excellence. So here's this little cattle herder girl, sometimes having to herd livestock, sometimes having to do some really hard chores that are part and form that palette of the rural upbringing that some of you may not have had, or you would have had parents who talk and tell you about it. And now she says, the life lessons that I learned there have taken me into the boardroom, that when I'm sitting around the boardroom table, I'm able to relate to what I experienced and how those lessons carried me forward. So it's a book that I'm reading. She's here today. Just stand up, Sis Mvuisi. And I'm so proud of you. So really proud. And the things we have in common, we're also coached by Sam Zima. He's her executive coach and my executive coach. And she's brought her book upon request to sell. If you have 200 brands to part with, I really suggest you get it today. What book are you reading?
I've got a similar story with being forced to read it. My dad would drop us off at the public library every week. My middle sister, she never liked that because she'd always take the book back and never read. So my parents also instilled the love of reading. You always find me, I'm always reading a couple of things at one time. I'm currently reading Barbara Maskela's Poli Poli, and I'm also started reading Skull, Woman and Other by Bernardine Evaristo. So getting into the space around LGBTQI and understanding a little bit of that. I think that's sort of my learning journey as well. And then I often lean into my husband's leadership literature. He's the guy on all the self-help and leadership books. I sort of lean into a little bit of that. And then as an aside the other day, he laughed, he says, doesn't matter if she's a professor or what, she loves that You magazine. It's for a number of things, the popular culture, the crosswords. So a couple of things. So whatever sort of, I just feel reading anything. If there's anything, I would pick up the literature and read it. So it's important, and that's what grows up. And trying to get my 12-year-old boy to read. He'd prefer watching it on TikTok as a video or a YouTube. And I know this generation doesn't like the reading aspect. It's so important because you take yourself away on journeys, you learn from others' experiences, you relate it, you create pictures in your mind. And that's so powerful in terms of reading. But I guess there's new ways of doing that, the TikToks and the YouTube. So I'm still not on the Kindle. My husband bought me a Kindle when it just came out. I gave it to my mom. And she's used it much better than I have. I love books and paper and pens. Today coming here, my sister was laughing. I was like, shoo, I need a paper, man. I can't do this notes thing. So different things, but
I struggle sometimes with the notion of, my battery dying, and then what am I going to do? Or my power saving coming on, and then what am I going to do? So it's just, my comfort blanket is paper, but I love the Kindle. And social media, you talk about your son and being on TikTok. I love following you. I follow you on Facebook. And what I love about your Facebook page is it just shows the world of academia. And I love it when she's in her robes, and I say, that's my girl, in her PhD robes. And, but profiling UJ, profiling the work she does, doing it so gracefully and graciously. And then intertwined in that, you'll see Chad, her son, and the aunties and birthdays. So it tells me this is a family person, this is who she is. So you build a persona with social media. And the importance of social media today cannot be undermined or underestimated when it comes to our personal brand. There are people who, when you are applying for a job, will first do a social media report on you. So take note as you build your personal brand. What do you want people to see when you are on social media? What is the picture you're painting? I'm not into this Black Twitter thing, you know? Black Twitter, it's just too vicious, it's scary, I run and I hide because I'm like, yo, they're asking me a question. I don't think I'll answer, I'll just be quiet. So Twitter is not my game, but there's a lot of good information there if you follow the right accounts. What are your thoughts about social media?
So, yeah, I'm a Facebook child. I can clearly vouch for me, so I'm still on Facebook since 2000 and whenever it came out. But people like Kagiso is what sort of encourages me to sort of, you have to be on all the platforms. And so, again, how you project yourself in the brand. So, if it is coming across that it's family and connections on my social media platform. So I am on Instagram. I started using it as my album. Share my photos with my sister. There's my sister that I chose for myself, Samantha. So you often see me with often with a glass in our hands, but laughing, always, always laughing. And I used it as an album, and then the youngster said, no, if you don't get so many likes, you must remove the picture. I was like, oh dear, I'm not even getting that amount of likes. But again, how are you projecting yourself and what do you use it for different things? LinkedIn as well, important network to be part of. I mean, I think that's where people, you see when you're in the job market and you've gone for an interview, suddenly you see, so many people have visited your profile today. So again, it's an important profile, and I use LinkedIn in that way. Again, to put out opportunities when we do that in a different way. Twitter, I read it for the new stuff, but I agree. Sometimes it's just absolute nonsense. So again, what it is you take in, filter a lot of that, but it's powerful. Social media is powerful. But it's also, when you're on social media, with your staff and as an older person, so they add you as your friend, but it's to sort of get a sense of them, but it's not to judge. I think that's been important for me in terms of social media, because they invite you into their space. Okay, and you get a sense of what people are doing and who they are, and it gives you that, because I think the personal and professional are so intertwined. And that's why you need to be so mindful of what you're putting out into that space, right? But you get a good sense of people and what it is they're doing. Like you've sort of got a sense of my sunshine, how important academics is to me, my family connections and stuff. But slowly and slowly you also realize the dangers of it. And you sort of, filter what you're putting out there. Because it can be a very vicious platform. And then having young children that are now sort of going into the space of social media, Instagram, what's the other one, Snapchat, and all these funny ones. I only got to know because Chad loaded it on my phone. I was like, okay, what is all these things that are popping up on there? But you have to know. I think at least be aware of it, even if you're not using it, because that is what the next generation is using.
I'm going to say, he's not a tall man, but he's giant. He's a giant when he's in a room. Soft-spoken, intelligent, able to make sure everyone is heard, but when he talks, you want to listen to him for days. I think Hope also received, we did senior management executive training for teams, and he received that. And I think we've also experienced it recently, not from Sam, but at City Lodge Hotel Group, we're going through some training. I have a colleague, Andrea Anderson, who also, paid from her pocket to have Sam give her executive coaching. So I'm not making a marketing plug. He truly puts you on a journey that allows yourself to transform and look in the mirror. And yesterday I called him excited because I was like, I can't just be the only one talking. There'll be Di, there'll be me, and then they'll all get tired. Somebody has to pull it in together. And I looked at the guest list and I said, Sam, that's the best person to pull this in together for us, based on what I know him to do. And I want to read my girl Michelle's quote before I call him up. She says, there's power in allowing yourself to be known and heard, in owning your unique story, in using your authentic voice. And there's grace in being willing to know and hear others. This, for me, is how we become. Thank you. Please do us the honors. And I will not be talking to you anymore, except afterwards when we network, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming.
Wow. I think we have to give you a round of applause.
Yes.
Anything new is very problematic. You know that? This, if you came in here for the first time, or you didn't know that this was for the first time that we enjoy this, you would have thought that these people have been doing this for years. But that's what it does. That's what it means to be a professional. You know, it does not matter where you got the skill from. If you are fully present and awake and alerted to who you are, you show up. And they showed up to it. They really showed up. Thank you very much for that. I've had to transform myself from being a speaker to become a coach some years ago. What that meant is that as a coach, you must learn to listen and be in the background. And you show up through your products. But because of the relationship I've had with Sis Lindiwe for many years, and I still say, you don't stop being somebody's coach. So I wasn't going to say no to it. And I was sitting here just enjoying the moment, knowing very well where it all started. Yeah. And I made sure that when we came here earlier on that I connect with her. I connected with her on LinkedIn after I knew that she was a speaker. So that's what we all do. I went on LinkedIn, then I connected with her. I read a little bit about her. And when I came here, I was the first to be here, by the way. That's another thing about when you are going into an environment where you don't know what to expect. You must be the first. So I was the first one sitting here. She came in, and then I chatted with her a little bit. And I think that chat must have really helped a lot.
You did.
So mine is really just to give you a reflection on what was covered here in this forum by the two colleagues. I really want to compliment Cecily with having taken the step to start something, by the way, that has always been in her. I even reminded her that this is not something that just fell from somewhere else. We've had a conversation about this. You know, that there comes a point in your life where it's no longer about money and your job, but it's about what do you do to humanity. And as Richard Lyder said, that you get connected with your life purpose. And by the way, there are people who die without connecting with their life purpose. And if you have not connected with your life purpose, you don't know what you're talking about. It becomes a fury. And therefore, in coaching, one of the key things we do is really to help people to connect with their life purpose. I coach you and you say, I want to be a good performer. I said, what's that? I'm not going to coach you to be a performer, because once you become a performer, so what? So it's something bigger that you leave behind. So it was demonstrated here that in this forum, there was a purpose, there was passion, and there was performance. Absolutely. And those are the three things that we look at. My expectations were met and actually were exceeded, because I was a little bit nervous, because I didn't want her to fail in something that is so big for her. Because I know where it started, and when she put it on social media, I said, this must succeed. I was the first to take it and share it. So a lot of things were confirmed for me today. One of those is that the universe doesn't leave a vacuum. We were filling up a vacuum. And she had to be the one that fills up that vacuum. Even if you avoid it, at some point in time, you're going to find yourself able to wake up to do it. And this was it. Because something like this, for me, is so much needed in South Africa today, even in the globe. Yeah? Somebody has to do it, and if it's your calling, it can wait until you are ready for it. And therefore, that for me was confirmed. So be aware that if your calling is out there and you are not finding it, you're going to have a serious disturbances. You will never be restful until you find it. So that was confirmed for me. Secondly, that conversation on topics that appeal to professionals across industries must be had. There's a lot of conversations that we're not holding in our industry. And they must be championed by people that are passionate about it. Yeah. And that, again, that connection you felt here, nothing was being faked. It was just natural. Even though at the beginning we all nervous, say, I don't think I can do this, but if it's you, you're going to experience that magic. Thirdly, networking with fellow professionals is not a luxury. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go onto my LinkedIn profile, I'm not really highly networked. There are people who are highly networked. I think yesterday you saw it, Vice Chancellor of UCT being named one of the top LinkedIn influencers in the world. In the world. A VC from UCT. So because she goes there and she does not fake things, she goes there and she puts through what she stands for. And I commented, I say, you're not just a leader for UCT, you're a leader of the society. And she's connected with it. Now she's the chairperson of Association of Research Universities of the World. From our own country. Because she does something about her profession. She lives a professional life. Ageism. Thank you. Who asked the question about ageism? My organization was started in Hillbrook 25 years ago through young people, through football. Then I was working with ABSA. I'm at my best with young people. But at the same time, when I finish here tonight, I'm going to meet the executive of the German Chamber of Commerce. We're going to celebrate 70 years anniversary. These are top-notch Mercedes-Benz, BMW people. I up myself to that level. It's not about this age people are. It's about you meeting people at the level where they are. When you are not able to connect at a certain level, it's not the people that you are trying to connect with who are battling, it's you. Because you don't know where they are and then you don't connect them to the right level. Yeah? So I think that's very, very, now the aha moments. The aha moments that I want to share with you. The story you were sharing with us. In coaching, we call it the perspective. If you come to me and I will not coach you until I've built a relationship with you. And the only way I can build a relationship with you is to hear your story. And I always say to people, I'm a rural boy from Skukuneland. I was a head boy as well. I used to call myself a head boy scholar. Because in the rural Skukune, I had to look after cattle. Today I go to the field, I don't go to school. The following day I go to school. That's why I call myself a head boy scholar. But that is what defines who I am. That's my identity. I cannot disown it. The day you decide to disown it, until you are at a critical moment, you get reminded that you are a true rural boy from Skukuneland. Yeah. So that is very, very important that we tell our stories, and that is unmasked the titles that we are carrying. And then the other aha moment is the storytelling. That's an African culture. If you want people to be at their best, ask them to really share the story of their lives. So we do that quite a lot. Some new insights. Sis Lindiwe and I, we have had this discussion some time ago about getting into the social media. It's a jungle. You can't afford not to be in it. And if you are inside it and you don't understand what type of animals are in it, instead of you becoming a hunter, you become the hunted. Yeah? You have no choice, but you have to be in the social media. It's not about being in it or outside, it's about how to be in it. That for me are some insights. Take home, takeaways. Soft power. Soft power. That's the takeaway from me. Authenticity as well is something that I'm taking away from you. Being true to yourself, showing up the way you are. It's very important. Even in the boardrooms, you have to be true to yourself. Some behaviors that I think I've learned that there are certain things that we need to practice. And one of those I said, please try as hard as possible to connect with your life purpose, and sometimes it takes longer for you to connect with it. The famous Italian-French artist. What's his name?
Andrea.
Michelangelo.
Oh, okay.
Is that him that they said he connected with his life purpose when he was lying on his sick bed. That's only time then he connected with it and understood what it meant to be who he was. So, having had such a long coaching relationship with Ms. Lindiwe, I know and I can relate to the space she's in now. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I feel privileged to have had that long journey with her. Sometimes you can't even remember how it was like then. You know. So mentoring and coaching relationship is not an event, it's not an incident, it's a process, but you have to be very intentional about it, and you have to know what you want. Because if you don't, we can coach you somewhere else if you don't know what you want. That is unfortunately part of it. So that's really a beauty to share such stories. And lastly, I don't know where this is heading to, but one thing for sure I know that it's going to grow.
Yes.
That's one thing for sure, because it has as I said, it's filled up the space that has been existing and not been filled, and you happen to be the one. I really, really want to congratulate you and you yourselves as well to have made this time available. This might just be the best investment of your life. You know, I knew I will meet people here that I've met through her. My brother Hope, where we had many conversations in a coaching environment, and I've seen him growing, leaving Birchwood. Today we say he's a GM, and we take it very simplistically, but I know from where you were to become a GM, now to be a GM, even your foundation that you are now launching, we spoke about that. Now here's my belief. If you want things, you need to say them into the universe, because the universe will give them back to you. Don't say, I'm not sure. Say things loud and clear, in many cases to somebody else. But you are not necessarily talking to that somebody. You are saying them to the universe, and the universe gives it back to you. Yeah. The same relationship I've had with my sister, Lucy. And by the way, we were introduced by Sis Lindiwe at Birchwood. The rest is history. Today I look at her as Coach Vusi. She's no longer a coach. She's Coach Vusi, and she's writing books. So I'm sure the rest of you will get the opportunity next time to also sit in front here. And when you are asked to tell your story, don't judge yourself. Because most of the times when you are called forward, the moment, in my experience of being a speaker, the moment they designate you to be a speaker, you can be rest assured everybody sees you as an expert. Honestly, I've never seen anybody questioning anybody on the stage, because the question you don't have an answer for, you don't know why then. If you stop judging yourself and you just give it, even the professor that knows that subject will not challenge you. That's my experience. And in coaching, we deal with this quite a lot, and it's a pleasure to be doing what I'm doing, because I have never worked with anybody who really know what they want and never crack it. And if we don't crack it, it's somewhere we are missing it. Or maybe they are not being honest with me. I haven't built enough relationship to develop that trust, and therefore that becomes a coaching topic. Why am I feeling that we are not getting each other? I've had to ask Lindiwe those type of questions, difficult questions. Only coaching can help you to come out of your true self. Out of those, then you become your true self. And what we have started doing, networking is the most powerful tool you can have in professional life. Because people do business with people. And people do business with the people that they can trust. And trust, you have to earn it. Earning a trust is a journey. It's not an event. If you come today and you disappear, you come after December this year. Now when you come in January, by the way, what was your name? Because we haven't connected. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, this is your
Thank you.
This one.